everybody. Welcome to the Purpose People podcast. We've got a really special guest, Nick Goldsmith, and he is the author of this book, Rewild Your Mind. It says on the back, reset, recharge, and rewild. Bushcraft instructor and ex-Royal Marine Commando Nick Goldsmith shows you how nature is the key to improving your well-being. Just in that alone, there's a huge story.
Yeah.
There's a whole load of stuff in there. So let's start with reset. What did you have to reset?
I think we all have to reset many times in our lives. But for me personally, I like to always say I'm probably on the third iteration of myself. So the first reset came after a very rural upbringing, lots of rugby and playing in the woods. And I wasn't quite good enough to make it as a professional rugby player. So I had to reset. I had to come up with a new plan, a new identity, and what was that going to be? So circa sort of 18, 19 years of age, I set my sights on, and born out of craving being part of a high performance team. I was playing sort of county standard rugby. I'd even been a captain. So that was all going to plan. And in my mind, the lineage was I'd go on to the dizzy heights of playing for someone like Quins or whatever. Yeah. And it didn't happen. And that was hard. So craving high performance teams, I had a chat with a cousin. I think my mum, mums being mums, she knew something was up. Put me in touch with cousin James, or second cousin James. And he'd just left 5 years of having earned his Green Beret and having served as a British Royal Marine Commando. I was hooked and sold. That was the first reset, and the new plan took place. Fast forward 11 years later, it was time to reset again.
Wow.
Only probably a bigger reset, some harder lessons learned, and more work to do on myself. So that then took the sort of guise and role of having been diagnosed with severe complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I'd spent nearly 4 years in a Naval Recovery Service Centre. I'd done 6 operational deployments inside of a very high-speed career of back-to-back exercises and, like I said, deployments and being away. And I needed a break. I needed a total new reset. And of course, actually, the answer was, as it always is, staring me in the face and right back at the start of the journey. So I went back to that safe space of the woods, and I reset myself there. And what you see today is essentially me in this latest iteration of myself as I continue my so far my 37 years on this planet. And no doubt there's more to come. But right now I'm very fortunate that those incredibly hard yards are now working for me. You know, those things happened for me, not to me. And that is my belief. And I'm now in a position to help others reconnect with themselves, with the landscape, physically, metaphorically, spiritually, however you want to put it. And that's what I specialize in. So I have a limited company, Hidden Valley Bushcraft. I have a charitable element to that, a community interest company, which is the Woodland Warrior Program. And more recently and of late, I've finally sort of reached that breakthrough in the last year or two where I can step away from hiding under a brand. And I'm now out there for the world to see and hear as Nick Goldsmith, as me.
So the interesting thing is that because we talk about with purpose, and often people reset for purpose. You know, they're going around one route, they realize that isn't the thing for them, and then they almost pivot into something else. But from hearing your sort of like take on life, is the resetting seems part of an ongoing process, almost like you come back round to it each time. Would that be a fair assessment?
I'd say there's definitely been a trend. There's been a trend there. And when I search myself and I think, well, why is that? It's amazing how much you can learn from your own journey by talking to others. And I'm sure through this process, you've witnessed that and felt that yourself. But in working with the Woodland Warrior Program, in sitting down with veterans, blue light services, emergency services, and all through COVID, key workers, I've literally spoken to every walk of life, from ministers right the way to 3 to 5 year old children at a Woodland kindergarten product that we had a while ago that was Ofsted Outstanding. And so I was in the woods every day with the teachers and the kids. And, there's been many versions inside of that latest version to get to where we are now, right? And so it started off with kids' birthday parties and all sorts. But if you look at what I'm doing now, if you put it all into one bracket, every single product is all about helping people to rewild your mind, as the book suggests. That is in essence what it is about. And I guess that has helped me grow in so many ways, as this podcast will have helped you. And I think it is just a constant rolling thing. Almost every 6 months, I kind of go, oh, it's happening again. That pattern, whatever it is. And then I make a change, and then I learn that lesson, and it stops there.
Do you think that's because there's the analogy, isn't it? It's like, you know what your purpose is, or what you're supposed to do at that given moment in time. And then through life, circumstances creep in. Yeah. And you make decisions more circumstantially based rather than conviction led. And what you find is you drift maybe 1% out. If you travel that journey for a long while, you might end up really far apart from your journey. And is that where the resetting is, where you just go, actually, I'm off target, let me just bring myself back to that path?
I think it is. I think you're right. We do know what our mission is, and I'm going to use a military context. Not that I'm to be honest, I'm actually quite unorthodox when it comes to the military stuff, but they call that mission creep. Yeah. Mission creep. And the mission, that's what we're going to try and do. And it just for me, it was the other way around. It was about, I couldn't just go straight to where I needed to go because of the process I've just been through. Who's going to listen to me credibly if I'm a guy who's just spent nearly 4 years in a naval recovery service centre and I'm shouting at the rooftops, hang on, I can see something here that needs to be done. We need to get people around a campfire. We need to go back to basics. We need to do this, blah, blah, blah. And of course, you've got things like due diligence, and these massive organisations are not going to suddenly go, okay, let's give him a load of money to do. Yeah. You have to prove concept. Yeah. You have to build that in. So I was the other way around, where I started with mission creep, and I've used that that kind of creeping barrage to bring myself on to where I am now. So it's only now, sort of 16, you're talking 7, 8 years, 9 years down the line, I'm doing the thing that I set out to do all along. It's taken me that long. And I've had to survive as a business. I've had to survive COVID and all the rest of it, like the rest of us.
Yeah, of course.
And so it was very interesting you use the word pivot. Yeah. Because I talk about that when I'm working with young entrepreneurial-minded individuals who leave the system, the armed forces, the police, and they want to do something of their own. They don't necessarily want to work for another massive hierarchical system again. They want to go it alone. And of course, I'm guessing exactly as well as I do, being entrepreneurs, it's terrifying. It's utterly terrifying at times. Yeah. And so how do you do that? And what strengths do we have? And there are a lot of phrases and there are a lot of terms and terminology and habits and behaviors that put us in really good stead for that background. But there's also some that are deeply unhelpful. Yeah. So it could be anything from, I'll give you some examples. I realize there's a big subject in what I've just unpacked there. So you could be a person who has a business, and I'll use my own stuff I've learned. I used to religiously drive out of my way, a couple of miles to the petrol station, diesel in the Land Rover. So I've got a Land Rover Defender for the business. Yeah. And I would fill that thing so that Monday morning, I would start Mondays knowing that I'd filled the fuel. It's a very military thing to do. Yeah. And then I did the maths and I thought, actually, entrepreneurially, I'm driving 4 miles out of my way each way, 8 miles, 52 weeks. I'm just putting more fuel through the landy than I actually need to do when I could just wake up 15 minutes earlier and build in a petrol station en route to where I'm going to do the gig or deliver the thing. Yeah. So I was like, actually, this habit, this is great if I'm working in a big system and it's not me paying the fuel. Yeah. So that's one tiny example. But there are many timekeeping, appearance and things like that are all great, and we can't knock that. Yeah. Turning up at the right place in the right time with the right clothing on, appropriately dressed, 5 minutes early, that's all good stuff. Yeah. Stick with that because employers love that in today's age. And I think that armed forces veterans and blue lights, etc., have a lot to give. But that pivoting thing I'm on about comes when you have a product or service or a skill, And it might even be a byproduct of your business. So I know a lot of people are taking coffee grounds from coffee shops and using them to grow shiitake mushrooms.
Yeah.
It's a byproduct of someone else's business. It's a throwaway item. They have to pay to get rid of it otherwise.
Yeah.
And you can take that and turn that into something profitable. Fantastic. It's also eco-friendly, it's sustainable. And I'm all about helping people to create circles, loops that have a start and an end at the same point. And inside of that, every person is getting a fair service and being serviced and being provided for. The environment's being covered, because I'm very conservationally minded with everything.
Yeah, of course.
And so I set my business out in this manner. So when I sit down and I'm talking to someone, they might say to me, well, what does that mean to me? I'm a tech company. And I'll go, listen, I'll pull out a spoon, a tiny little wooden spoon, beautifully carved spoon. And I'll say, right, here's your example. How long did it take me to make this spoon? So I wish I had one to show you now, but how long do you think it would take? Let's play this game. How long do you think it would take to make a spoon?
From scratch, out of wood?
Out of scratch, yeah.
Out of scratch. Well, if it's handcrafted, let's go the handcrafted route. Good couple of hours.
Good couple of hours, yeah, ideal. So fully finished, sanded, oiled, 4 hours,
let's say
all in.
Yeah.
So how many spoons can I make in a day?
Yeah.
So max 2 spoons in a working day. How much can I sell a spoon for at a country show? A £5 if someone feels sorry for you.
Yeah.
There's probably some expert spoon carvers out there that get a lot more and they're worth it.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is there enough money in spoon carving, being an off-grid spoon whittler, for me to pay my mortgage? And I'm looking at the tech company person there and they're saying to me, well, obviously no. And I said, what if I told you I could make the same spoon with the same knife in the same amount of time in the same environment, but now I can turn that spoon into best part of £1,000 day? And they're literally like, what? I said, I get paid to sit around this campfire and I will pull in £1,000 for my business, okay, to make this same one spoon.
Yeah.
Pivot. So now you teach.
Yeah.
£100 a person, a big campfire lunch all put on as part of the day. You learn everything from literally finding the branch, sustainably harvesting from the branch. So you're learning your stop cuts and how to coppice. So you're coppicing part of the woodland. So you're doing the woodland management, which ticks another box. And then you're going to come back. You're going to learn everything to go home with a carved greenwood spoon that you can put up in your kitchen. You've got fond memories with a visual reminder of a good time that you had and that you remembered and you felt connected. There was this team vibe. I gave my usual guised talk, song and dance about mental health woven in between the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's the £1,000 that's coming through the door for making that one spoon. And they sit there with their mouth open for about 2 minutes. And like I said, there is something that you are doing, providing, currently thinking about doing right now, which will have multiple angles. And being an entrepreneur is about thinking outside the box.
100%. I think that's what we found in the aspects of through COVID. We were forced to do things differently. And I think like educators, for example, were educating on a one-on-one. And then they realized, hang on a minute, I could do one to many. I could have same price with 12 people in the room as opposed to one person in the room, charging £1,000 a head. Transformational.
Boom.
But you don't think that way unless you're under that pressure or someone challenges you to say, is that the only way to do it? And often, like with a tech company, we're the techies, we know best. But it's often a non-techie that asks them the question to then go, oh, I didn't think about that. No, because you're looking at it through your narrow framework of reference. There's a tech company produces tech, but to a business, there's so many other things attached to it.
Very true. Very true.
To get you to think differently.
I think that that's possibly why so many companies, you mentioned big tech companies, and I won't name the company on here now, but I've just been asked to go and give it's almost I guess it's a government level tech company, have asked me to go up there and my suggestions and the way this is going to pan out essentially is it's going to be campfire elements as they bring together all the departments that through lockdown have been working as individual cells, have now suddenly got to come together. And of course, it's all a bit, this is my train set, which is normal. That's human politics. That's very normal. And it's how do we integrate that all into one system where you're essentially creating community, not just colleagues in the workplace. Because if everybody is there in one singular community, mission-minded, with passion and purpose about the individual bits that they do, and everybody can see that their role is just as important and plays a part to make the next piece of the thing turn and, you know, the wheels go round and whatever, that's the gold standard.
Well, and the thing with tech people generally within the coding world, or certainly coders, sorry, mind the camera, with coders is they're very introverted, so they don't mind being locked up in the room and quiet and away from everybody else.
Yeah.
And you're not even putting them in a nice, comfortable environment and bringing them together. You're taking them outside, sat around a campfire, which is the complete opposite from their nice, shiny desk.
Yeah. It's the
mouse
polar opposite.
Yeah, this is good.
But for the fact that we're human, and for 300,000 years, we've shared a campfire. And for 300,000 years, we've cooked over that campfire. Yeah. There are hard settings in the old grey matter that state that when you take people and you put them in that environment, certain elements, regardless of your caricature type, start to come online. It's fantastic to see. And I love that when you get the feedback and someone says, I never would have thought in 1,000 years I would have spent the day under a parachute next to a campfire, let alone made a spoon or whatever it is. And they can go back to techieing and working in that environment, etc. And like you say, the challenging element is getting them to the course. And then once they get there, if I'm doing my job correctly, it should be seamless. It shouldn't feel forced. It should just be a nice, organic, get those buzzwords in there, organic environment, in which the conversation flows and those things just happen.
But it's about creating the environment. I think that's the key thing, and creating an environment almost opposite to their day to day. And I think that's when great conversations happen, and ultimately we then almost forget about what we do and we just converse. We have conversation, we talk, and all of a sudden I'm not the job title on the board. But I took well, I didn't make it, unfortunately. The guys will laugh at me, but they did a day out. I just got COVID, so I couldn't go on this day out. But this day out was getting sheep into a pen.
That is probably one of the most organic forms of team building going.
Yeah, so their company, they've been on here before. They're called Raising the Bar. So my team, who used to work on
I've heard of them.
And that, they in a field, and the team had to get all these sheep into a pen. And, you know, talking to them at length about all the people that they've worked with, they often find the superstars in the team that never get the chance to speak up, say this, that, and the other. And often find the person with the title performs the worst because it's like, oh, I've got this. Yeah. And it's all about, and eventually you're brought down to, we've all got to work together.
I am so glad you've just gone here with this. Right. So, not naming names, but I've seen so many companies get off the bus. I mean, we're talking everything from groups of lawyers from London to all kinds of different companies all over the planet. Yeah. And I've done it multiple times where the CEO or whoever it is striding out at the front, and I'm struggling to keep up with them because we're going to the location to deliver the course. And the course is happening in the woods, and I'll meet them. Now, part of what I do essentially, and where I do it, in my place of choosing anyway, because I travel about, but is I get them off at the car park. I thank them all for coming, yada, yada, yada. Ask all the usual questions, who's come the furthest, all the icebreakers, all the things you can imagine to get in there, a bit of history about the area. And I stop them all off next to this beautiful weir, tons of rushing water coming over this arched weir. And I'm talking about poisonous plants and foraging elements. And what I'm really doing is getting them to sit there and start taking off the layers of the onion from the coach ride in. We're going to work today. For some of them, it's an enforced type 2 fun. Yeah. I don't want to be here. So that introvert techie individual who would just quite happily be left alone in the room, doesn't really want to come on a big, team building day.
Yeah, I just changed my screensaver to some grass.
Do you see what I mean? And it's quite important. So, so I can start to work on that. By the time they get to that woodland, they are fully integrated and ready to sit down around a campfire and they've got a taste of me and my sense of humor and, you know, what I'm about. And so hopefully I've done my job by the time they get there. So there is a process, but that CEO is striving, baring teeth, smiling as they into the wind as they take off across the.
And I guess having seen your version of having been in the army and the hierarchical and the ranks
Within
and
the Marines,
stuff like that.
yeah.
It's almost like everybody almost sees that as the way of leadership. You know?
Yeah, there is a misconception in
that is
society
leadership.
that because you are essentially, if we break that down, using a system that's 1,000 years old, which is bestowed upon you, the leader, you, as long as you follow the system, all is well.
Yeah.
Just because, I'm going to chuck this out there at the risk of upsetting the apple cart, just because you've led 3,000 men and you've had these massive budgets and all this military equipment it doesn't mean that you are a fantastic leader. It means that you can use a system 1,000 years old. If you go to a massive company and they say, right, we're going to give you 6 million, we want to see a 4% by the end of the year, we want to see da.
But for me,
there's no file for that.
That's making the leaders, right?
Exactly.
And what I say that in the volunteer sector, those people that work in the volunteer sector or work with volunteers, that's often where you find the best leaders.
A volunteer is worth 10 pressed men. It's an old naval saying.
Oh, is it? There you go.
So when I turn that CEO around at the top of the hill and I say, just give me a snapshot looking down that hill at your team coming up over the hill, I guarantee, and this has happened, that I'll be able to point out to them and go, are these three here who are walking abreast at the front? These are your team leaders? Oh yeah, no, and those two there, they're in charge of another cell. And then would you say that everyone getting off the coach is not only in the complete order that they sat in the coach, but that's how they see themselves psychologically within your company?
Wow.
And those two at the back, are they apprentices or something? And they'll be like, oh yeah, they're here on a work placement.
Wow.
They'll be like, And then suddenly that CEO is now looking at me going, you now know something I need to know. So now I've managed to get them to see that my version of reality has value.
Yeah.
And so from that day forth, the rest of the feedback that I'm in that person's ear, because it saves me writing reports, is decent and is worthwhile. So when I've got them all around a campfire and I'm delivering whatever it is we're going to do, we're going to be making fire, collecting water, we're going to build a shelter, and at the end you're going to have a challenge where you're going to have to signal for help and we're going to break you into teams, whatever.
Yeah.
Or it could be we're doing woodland management, like catching a sheep. I've got 1,000 baby trees in the ground. We want this tree crop to do well. It's part of the bigger picture to create a wildlife corridor here in the Chew Valley. We're going to get all of you to work around the outside of the trees. I'm going to give you some common things to watch for: couch grass, ant hills, blah, blah, blah. Take the plastic thing off, put it back on. And I'm sort of intermingling. Well, you'll see maybe one out of that entire workforce who almost side on, cold body language, doesn't want to be here. There's something going on there.
Yeah.
And I can just have that little conversation. What's happening with said individual over there? And then you just see the face of, I've got to have that meeting. Yeah, it's in my office on Monday morning. Something going on then. Yeah, okay. I'm not going to pry, but I'm going to guess whatever it is at home. And whatever it is, it's prioritizing work.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Okay. So not teaching you to suck eggs, but, emotional intelligence and emotional articulancy is key here, because I'm also going to guess that person's been here a very long time, and that person is like the glue of the workforce and sees themselves, regardless of their position, as having a bit of sway here.
Yeah.
And they will walk and they'll make noise when they walk.
Yeah.
So all that information, those years of experience, are going to walk out the door.
Yeah.
If that conversation is not managed and fostered in such a way that they genuinely, empathetically feel, not just the words that come out your mouth, that you want to help them get back online and see them prosper within the business. And so we can have that conversation around the campfire. That's an appropriate place and an environmental setting to just do that little bit of coaching. And then the rest is, once they leave my woodland, I don't see them again. So.
But it's an interesting thing is that sometimes you have to get them out of the environment to see. Stands out
a country mile.
Yeah, well, you'll see it because you're there for the first time, aren't you? You're seeing it as a...
I don't. So there's no judgmental bias.
No.
There's no narrative. I'm just coming into it genuinely as... If I can help as many people as possible through my actions and my deeds, and my words are almost secondary to the way I carry myself. Yeah. And I think that's really important in life.
Yeah, 100%.
So if I can do that, and enough people can go home having literally felt, they feel that, people always remember the way you make them feel. Yeah. Not just the throwaway words.
But they're also, one of the things I was taught is that it's at the end of the day that they remember more than the beginning of the day.
Yeah.
So the experience at the end of the day or whatever you do if things are resolved, those sorts of things. They remember that as a positive experience. Or
Yeah.
if they, at the end of the day, someone said something and then they forget everything that went before it.
Yeah.
So it's quite important that, you know, that there is that process that you have, and they leave like, wow, that was incredible. But it's something for them individually changed, that they saw life differently, or they left with a takeaway of, I can do this, or you know what, I need to go and spend some more time in the forest, for example.
That's it. If you can just, I mean, I often describe the process, and essentially what we do is we help the horse to realize it's thirsty. So it's a stage before pointing the horse to water, because we can all point the horse to water and we all know it won't drink unless it wants to. We've all been that horse. But it's only when, if you can never smog should, must, ought to, or got to, and someone points a finger at you and says, oh, do you know what you should do? You must, you ought to, you've got to. And personally, if I go back a few years, I would have wanted to take your finger off and stick it back in your eye. You know, I was sick of being told what to do. I had to learn to be my own autonomous creature and start to learn and stand on my own 2 feet. Was
that the biggest thing coming out of the army? Did you feel that within that environment, there was this process and you had to, and then afterwards you felt almost a little bit?
I think, I mean, the level of personal administration and kind of the standard required as an individual soldier within the Royal Marine Commando setup it's just excellence all the way. It's nothing less than excellent. Everything must be perfect at all times, on and off the battlefield. The way you live your lives, the way you hold each other to account. I mean, it's literally hilarious looking back. The mannerisms, the behaviours, the silly games, the even drinking on nights out, and in the accommodation when you live together. If I left a mug on the coffee table like that, I would come home and back to the accommodation, because you literally live together, fight together in the same group of chaps. Yeah. And do you remember the old school TVs? I'm showing my age now.
Yeah.
With the big
bit at the back,
10 foot deep,
they weigh
100 kilo.
Yeah.
And no one's paying a TV license. The TV license guys are outside the camp, but that's another thing. So you've got these TVs, and there'd be like yellow tape on top of this massive TV, and anything found out of place, or a cup or a spoon that wasn't washed up properly, would just be there on the TV in the central TV room in the evening, and you knew there was going to be a roll-off.
Wow.
And there'd be a big fluffy, I'm not even allowed to use the word dice. It's okay because I'm out now, but we used to have to say the word mice because you couldn't pronounce the word dice. There were certain words you couldn't say. It was ridiculous. Wow. And you would roll. And 1 to 6 would be the punishments on the wall. So you could be washing and ironing everyone's clothing for the next week. You could be going to get a takeaway. You could be in bed, but you were on the takeaway routine because you'd made a mistake or left a cup out or something. And at any point, somebody would come and tip your whole bed, tombstone your whole bed up like that. Oh. And you'd have to go get on the bicycle and cycle a mile down to collect a pizza and then put it on the plate with a knife and fork and all the rest of it and present it to them for a week. Wow. Because you left the cup and it found its way on top of the TV and the punishment was set. Some of them were hilarious. You had to get inside 2 Norway sleeping bags, the big Arctic sleeping bags, and lie in front of the we used to call it the crimper, in front of the heater. And then the second roll would be for multiples of 10 minutes in front of the heater. You just lie there in the sleeping bag suffering.
But when you left the army, then did you, because that discipline is like there, isn't it? But then the people that you live with and the people you engage with, not everyone lives to that standard. So this is where the issues start. But for me, very fortunately, and because I've started that thread, I've just got to finish off the last one. Go. There used to be a boombox in the corner of the room, like, you know, with the multi-cassette, play all the bits on it. And in the bottom was a table with a table cover over it. And they'd cut a post box out of and put tape around it. So it's literally like this. That was called the reflection box. So if you rolled a 5, you'd be in the reflection box and your second roll would be for multiples of 10 minutes. So everyone else is watching TV on the sofas. And you're watching like a gremlin through this. It's hideous. Right. I was very lucky. I moved from 4-5 Commando from that unit after my first tour, got injured, and it was pretty kinetic. We did everything from fixing bayonets to having 105mm artillery shells coming in at danger close. And all the stuff you read about, it happened on that tour. Yeah.
sadly, lads lost their lives, life-changing injuries.
Where was the tour?
It was in Afghanistan, it was in Sangin, and it was in 2008.
Yeah.
Bloodiest year of the conflict, I think day one I was involved in 3 ambushes and danger close artillery, and my section commander took one through the shoulder. Very brave man. He realised that the radio on his back was laying linear to the floor because we were all laying on the floor, and the enemy had decided to ambush us at maybe 40 metres away, and 50 degrees of heat, and you're carrying about 70 kilos, 70 plus kilos, 147 pounds of kit.
Yeah.
And very, very tricky. And he realised that to get this message out there, he was going to have to get up on a knee. So he did that and took one through the shoulder and carried on like he was buying a pint of milk. Very brave man.
Wow.
And so we all did what we did, and we got out of there and did an amphibious extraction through the water up into a little fob there. And someone else had been caught across the neck. And then we got hit another 2 times on the way back in that sort of low light between, do we use our night vision goggles or not? My eye is failing, but the night vision hasn't really quite kicked in yet properly. So, hands down, what we were up against there were brilliant small arm tacticians who knew the ground. It was their back garden. Yeah. And they were letting us know that. So that set the pitch and tone for the rest of that tour, 18-hour patrols, all the rest of it. I then sadly injured this left knee, which I've just had another X-ray on, and I'm probably looking at a knee op at this rate.
Oh, right, okay.
So that'd be the 4th one.
Wow.
But this was the first time I'd really done that. So I then went back to the UK injured, and as soon as I could bear weight after an operation, I ended up doing 14 funerals inside of 6 or 7 months.
Wow.
Carrying coffins, etc., which is extremely heavy on the soul.
Yeah.
During that period between tour number 1 and number 2, and this is before me moving from the yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir, 4-5 down to a more unorthodox, and this is where it comes into being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, of course.
I was in the right place, wrong time to save a young lady's life in a pub toilet. She had severed the femoral artery quite low down in the leg from a shard of broken mirror, a simple mistake of pulling up a knickers and knocked into the wall length mirror broke, and the shard must have bounced off the deck and just gone in. Somebody I believe to be the manager, someone had pulled it out suddenly and whoosh off she'd gone. So
oh my gosh.
Only snag is it's 2 a.m. and it's a lock-in. So I leap into action. I'm in there, passed out on the sofa. I deal with this thing. I'm absolutely covered in it, and it is something quite horrific to behold. 19 minutes later, the ambulance arrived. I'd managed to stem as much of the bleed as possible. She was going into hypervolemic shock. She'd lost half the blood in her body, was chemically induced in a coma for 2 weeks, and is a single leg amputee today as a result of her injuries. 64 plus surgeries later. This hasn't gone away for her. This is still a thing, and wow. I'm conscious she's going to watch this. So Kirsty, if you're watching, she's an absolute warrior.
Yeah.
We're both fortunate, I guess. I was right place, wrong time. But is the way I describe it, because obviously that had a profound effect on me.
Yeah, of course.
But then,
is that where you saw some of your training then, having
totally
an outworking now into civvy street?
Totally. So all that stuff I was trying to get away from, and I was very unusually drinking, because you'd either find me in the gym or probably drinking. It's my 2 vices. Yeah. Drinking to forget.
Yeah.
And then that happens to me.
Yeah.
And the reason I will not leave the house today without a belt on is because I didn't have a belt on that night. That would have been the easy go-to for the tourniquet. Instead, I had to use direct thumb pressure and lift her leg right in the air and stand on her chest and all sorts of stuff to try and keep pressures and things. And I was doing phonetic alphabet down the phone. Although I have limited memory of it, she remembers that clearly.
Wow.
Because we've only just had that conversation earlier this year where we both talk about what we saw and
what happened. But I mean, obviously that's a crisis in itself that's happened.
Straight up.
But then straight into it, you're using your training in a way that's different. And when I look at that situation, not saying that was, you left that and you said, right, let's set this up.
No.
Subconsciously, your training is now
100%. There is more to the journey. And at every point has involved me when I found myself in a genuine survival situation, because unfortunately it was more than just that.
Yeah, of course.
As the journey went on, that in itself was a life-changing event
Yeah.
for both of us.
Yeah.
The first tour was life-changing for me. What then followed was yet more life-changing experiences inside of a short sandwich of years, which obviously led to my diagnosis and me being the way I was.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could trace that lineage to physically teaching food, fire, shelter, water navigation, teaching people to master the outdoors and to master themselves. And doing that whole rewilding piece is you can see how you get from A to B very, very easily.
So is that so the stuff that you take people through? So we're in the midst of that intense situation. There's obviously the kick into your training. You automatically revert into that. Can you pot some of that training? You know, that sitting around the campfire and the time that you have. Can you pot some of those tools into people that they would stick to them, or do they?
You can.
But do they stick? You know,
to make it stick. So it's well known that storytelling.
Yeah.
So becoming a storyteller is something I've had to focus on as means to be articulate and to talk about otherwise incredibly emotive subjects without breaking down or without disassociating or without the sympathetic nervous system jumping in.
Yeah.
But I think I've managed to master that because I've done it so many times in such an organic environment.
Yeah.
That it's disarming to within myself.
But do you think that's been do you think it's been a bit of a healing process as well?
Oh, hugely so. But other people pick up on that.
Yeah.
So other people take that, I don't know, you want to call it a vibe. They take it away with them, and they go skipping out of the woods. There's a resonance and a frequency of competence and confidence that they pick up on, and then they take that forward, and then it becomes a force multiplier, and it just keeps.
It's an incredible thing because
you can see it in the feedback. If you go on TripAdvisor, you can see it in the feedback. Yeah, that kind of.
But what I found is that so much within the armed forces. There's so much teaching. There's so much of this stuff, and then it just gets lost. You know, they go into the and they do nothing with it.
Very sadly, there is a very poor. So that's one thing they're not very good at. Whereas an employer on Civvy Street would work really hard to keep that information and that knowledge. In fact, you even have managers who are in charge of it within the corporate world who are. Help me out here. What's the role where you oversee? So someone's going to leave.
Team leader or
someone's going to leave your business.
Yeah.
And so you want to try and recruit as much of that relationship that they have with other clients, and you want to try. First thing I see is they send them on garden leave. They isolate them straight away.
Yeah, because they think they're going to steal my clients straight away.
So there's a poor behaviour around that. But from a business perspective, it makes sense. But from the emotive empathy side of things, that person's going to leave your business, but are they going to sing from the rooftops? Well, they're getting paid for gardening leave and they've just been pushed out now. Yeah. But I think there are other ways of going about it.
Yeah,
the figures may say different, but in terms of from a human level, I think that there are better ways of doing that.
Yeah, it's about if the exit invariably happens, then it's helping them go further in their purpose.
Yeah,
and you going further in yours. And often the tension comes is because they're in the wrong place now.
Totally.
They might not have been, but they might have outgrown the organisation, or their place in life changes.
Or they're not feeling valued.
Yeah.
And they're feeling disconnected.
Which is one of the biggest things that people change jobs, right?
Single largest cause, I would say, is they believe, or they have lost the belief in the cause or the thing they do. They've lost sight of it somehow. It's got lost in translation.
Yeah. So
they don't feel valued, and therefore we're constantly seeking connection as humans on every level.
So we work with a lot of the agency that I run, the creative agency. We work with a lot of recruitment companies, which are trying to reinvent themselves because not had a great rap over the years. And thankfully, we work some really good ones that are there for the people, not for the commission.
Yeah, cool.
But the point of it is, it's like the first thing he said, they normally change job because they're not progressing. That's the first one. Second one is they don't get on with the boss. And then the third one is money. But it's amazing because people go, I thought that'd be the first one. It isn't. It's the connection. It's the feeling part of the team. It's the camaraderie.
Yep.
It's the building. But the reason why I'm interested in terms of the journey that you've been on in the army and then into the Civvy Street, because my family have come out of forces background.
Okay.
So my mum's brother, no longer with us, he was Green Beret in Northern Ireland.
Right.
And just never adjusted to life afterwards.
Oh, bless you.
Just struggled, drink. Just got involved in all kinds of stuff. Just couldn't adjust.
There is definitely a trend.
Yeah.
And I can say this hand on heart with with the observational science of a couple of thousands of conversations, real conversations around a campfire behind me, people who are joining up at 15 and 3 months, more often than not, are joining because either their parents did and they feel that they should, or they are trying to escape a childhood or a background. And then what you tend to get here is something I call the double rollover, where you enter this world, you're given 400 years worth of history, a uniform, a place to be, unity, time to be there, core history, all the rest of it. You get given this new identity, good to go. And at the end of your 22 years, even if you didn't incur anything overly traumatic during those 22 years, although the likelihood is you're more likely to because it's not a tickling competition and you're joining the armed forces, whatever role it's going to be, that all of that 9-year-old self, whatever it is, comes back to the fore and it hits you like a rake. I often talk about a few things being an entrepreneur are doing things out of, it's very hard when you do things and your metrics are not money. So if I ask someone, and I've been asked this question not too long ago, what's your metrics for this world? Like, what does money mean to you? Safety, security. Boom. Here's my 2 answers. It's 2 S's. If they come out with 2 R's straight away, which is going to be, do you know what they are?
Reward?
No. So 2 R's, letter R. Yeah. So it's going to be reputation and respect. So if money means reputation and respect to you, for me, that's a red flag straight away. And I'm not interested in doing business with you. Your metrics for this world are completely different. Because to me, that's not how respect or reputation is built or maintained or obtained. It's fantastic. You've got a great big portfolio that your parents have, that you've grown into. That's great. But if that's what your belief is, then that's not for me.
No, it's interesting because the observation, as you said, I from all those people, escape most of it.
Escape is probably the largest one.
And I think my dad joined the Navy at 15. I think it was 15. Just like, I'm done. I want out. Travel away. He got discharged, unfortunately. He lost his kneecap. And the hangar doors come back. Went,
that must have hurt.
You need to talk about knee ops, right? So they took a Hoover into his knee, sucked everything out, and put a steel bolt in about that big.
What?
And that's what they did. That was the standard.
That was the Mark 1 knee replacement at the time.
And 2 years after he had that, then they outlawed it. So it's too brutal.
It sounds brutal. A great big steel bolt.
So he's still got it. It's a steel bolt, but obviously his legs, over the years or whatever. But the point is, even like with my father, with my mum's brother, and it's that coming out of and that loss of identity.
It's huge. It's
and what I find amazing about your story is that you had this loss of identity.
Massive.
And then found a new one.
Accidentally. Very organically. So when we go back to what you said about we know what the right thing to do is. So I was just craving being the only place, because I didn't care about, like I said, I didn't care about money, I didn't care about anything. I didn't care about me. The only thing that felt right was to be round a campfire in that little patch of woodland that I had bought a couple of years prior. I'd saved up some tour money. Some people need a garden shed. I needed a little pokey slope of land that nobody could farm on. Nobody wanted. It was on for like $6,000, I think, initially for 2.5 acres. Nobody wanted it. Well, those 2.5 acres are now a internationally recognised outdoor business, and all these years later, that the work has gone in. But
it's interesting now. One man's wood worth nothing is another man's treasure.
Completely, from a conservation, from a teaching perspective, from a school, that pivot. So I can't make any money out of charcoal in this woodland. It's too small. It won't support that. Ecologically, it doesn't have any great big beautiful standards and timber crop to make veneers, tabletops and things like that. It's biodiverse. Biodiversity is extremely rich now. But at the time it was little over a giant overshadowed hedgerow. There was just cold, dark earth, not much fauna on the floor. Everything was being shrouded out and light suppressed. And there was an awful lot of initial yards to do there, let alone be able to walk from one end to another. You were on your hands and knees, and there was loads of Victorian rhododendron and things thrown in there, and I dug them out by the root. Everything was done by hand. There's an orchard in there now. It's just incredible.
But it's interesting to see that as you talking about it, your next thing on there's the reset, then there's a recharging.
Well, that's part of that process. That's now me down there every day, The internal monologue is still doing 10,000 miles an hour. We're talking circa 2014, 15. And I'm going over arguments in my head with people on tour that I can't ever get an answer for. I don't know why they chose to act the way they did. And I'm pretty sure I'm still justified in my responses, thinking back now logically and taking the bias out of it.
Yeah.
I was defending myself at the time. And, you go through all that stuff and you think, well, is it me? And you're made to feel it's you and you're gaslit. But actually, no, I think that those people were struggling themselves. And that's okay, and it's quite often we get so lost in the emotion, the emotive element, and so angry at the sympathetic nervous response that we lose, I'm going to use a phrase, the wood through the trees. We lose what's actually reality in here and what's not. Yeah. But there's something actually quite powerful because I was using it as a driver. So all of that pent up frustration, sense of rejection, injustice and grief, and I was experiencing all three, and any one of those is a huge fall down point for someone at some point in their life. We're all going to go through this. No one escapes those three. And I had this going, and I would just, with a spade, a second-hand spade, I would clear the area the size of half a football field of brambles, and I'd be cut to ribbons, and I didn't care, and I'd roll them all down like a big carpet, have a bonfire in the middle, and start prepping out what is today and now a thriving orchard, which we now work with the Woodland Warriors with our boys and girls from the. So
So did you feel that you were channeling the?
I was literally channeling it into the landscape, and I was moving tons of earth and tons of wood chip and using trees to build revetments and rebuild sections of bank that had fallen into disrepair, and hand making these great big pegs and knocking them into place to hold these trees back, and then scooping out. I mean, the stream is 350 meters. By hand, big, long-handled American shovels. Yeah. Started off as just me, then suddenly there's two of us, then there's three of us, then there's more and more people from the recovery centre saying, mate, can I come down your woodland? Can we just do some work this weekend? But it's helping those people to prove to themselves that they can still serve a turn, that they still hold purpose and they've got a day's work in them.
That's great.
Everybody gets something from it. And what I've got very good at over the years, and I guess is now my skill, is when I'm down there working with people, you might have somebody who, and I spotted that in the opening part of your book, Control the Controllables, who has no control over their controllables in their life right now. Yeah. So I'll give them a really specific purpose. Like I'll give them a set of secateurs and be like, your job, whilst we're all doing this, I'd like you to go up and down the path, and anything you see growing into the path, just nibble that back. And so they will just spend on day 2 of the Woodland Warrior weekend, we have like a team tasking. Yeah. I'll give them very specific jobs according to what I'm feeling around the campfire. So you always get that one very angry person. They get the scythe. They get an aluminium handled hockey stick with a blade scythe. Yeah. And I've always got a section that needs clearing.
So just give it to
them.
To
clear around the baby trees to help them come up through.
It's an interesting one because I smile because I remember the best football
anger management
season I played it angry. There's a load of stuff going off the pitch, like in my personal life.
Yeah, okay.
And the only outlet really, because I was in a professional environment, was the football pitch.
And I think sports is incredible for that. Now, looking back, when you look at the timelines and how all this stuff eclipsed for me, my rugby journey that started at 5 came to a cataclysmic halt in the Marines with a massive facial injury. I've got 2 plates, 4 screws, titanium mesh holding up my that socket. If you took an X-ray, it's like the Terminator on this side. Okay, and that was...
I thought there was like a red eye that glowed every now and then.
Well, that was playing for the Royal Navy against the Scottish Prison Service, raising money for Help the Heroes, ironically, at the time. And it was all going fairly well. 5 minutes into the second half, I went for a tap tackle as the boots are turning and burning. Caught one stud here that opened me up to the bone, severed a nerve, and then another one hit me in the corner of the eye there. I've been very lucky, thanks to the Max Fac surgeons at West Lothian Hospital in Scotland, to be left not too flat and to be in good condition there. But I can't dive, not supposed to box, not supposed to do any combat sports anymore or anything like that. So that stopped rugby. So suddenly my outlet, which you'd sort of save it all up on a Saturday or Sunday and you perform for 80, 90 minutes, was gone. Now, this happened at the end of tour number 1, between tour number 2, which followed tour number 3, which followed some more unorthodox work, which I won't go into too much detail here, which then followed that tour number 6, which was 7 months with no R&R, that final one, just about finished me off. And I came home with a big handlebar moustache and my hair was out here. And I was ripped because all you could do was just train and drink black coffee and smoke a pipe, which I'd never smoked in my life.
Right.
But I was, I was out there. I was wild. But I was in the wrong environment to be wild. So I put myself in the right environment to be wild, and everything starts to fall into place.
Yeah.
So I was not in the right place, which is what you mentioned.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I'd ceased to be interested in rank or anything.
It's having that healthy, as like an entrepreneur, it's having that healthy outlook on life and saying that people fit in different places, but they don't fit forever as well, because everything changes, right? I'm going through it now with my children. They're getting older. So what was comfortable, where they're all sat there watching TV and all that sort of stuff, and now it's like, I'm going to go off. And you're like,
doing something on my own.
I'm going to go and do this, and they're growing up, and it's because they don't fit that anymore. They're changing, and we've got to facilitate.
That's okay.
That.
Yeah,
we're stewards. We don't own them.
Mine's 4.
Yeah, well, you got
it's chaos.
So those days seem like years ago. So for me, it's a case of recognizing that there's this journey that you have from all your experience, and then you bring it to people to help them.
Yeah.
And, come out with, give them a task, give them whatever. Where do you see your impact long term? What do you see out of you? Because obviously you've got people come and visit you and they go, and you said, they're gone.
I think
how do you take that beyond just a one-off?
Well, because each person, it's almost a bit like religion, isn't it? You become a messenger of God. If you empower a person, it's that old classic about teach a man to make a net, or teach a man to fish. It's force multiplying. So if they can come away from their spoon carving day or whatever it is, learning about the paleocortex, the neocortex, the supercomputer we've had for the last 20,000 years, how memories and trauma and things are stored and how things work in a layman's terms, not delivered by necessarily a psychologist or psychiatrist, but delivered from someone who's spoken to quite a few for quite a serious amount of time. They then go on to empower other people at work and so on and so forth. So I've ended up doing speaking gigs where I've done talks for the NHS. Yeah. And I'll give you an example. Off the back of one of those, I got stopped by a lovely nurse who recognised the Landy, the logo on the Landy, and she said, "Hi, I was in a car park somewhere. You don't know me. I watched your talk on the intranet, and I just wanted to let you know that what you were saying about going to a barbecue and you can't remember anything past 9 o'clock, and in the morning you're getting told you've got to apologise to Claire and Dave, and what did you think you were doing, taking your clothes off and jumping in the swimming pool, and why were you climbing up the whatever you were doing." The premise behind dissociative episodes and having too much to drink and not being this checking out, and then whatever's raw and undealt with in the trauma box coming to the fore. She said, "I just want to let you know that I'm getting help now.
Wow.
I'm not drinking a glass. I'm not drowning myself in white wine every night after shifts, and I'm making a change." And she just literally went, "I just want you to know that." And she got in a car and she drove off. I was literally like, "Gosh, it's got a bit misty in here."
Yeah.
But
a bit of dust.
You forget the power of everyone's got a journey. All of us have. But in being able to articulate that journey so that there are tangible takeaways for others, being able to show your own vulnerabilities and shortcomings, and I've had a few. So it's important.
With the word rewild.
Yeah.
Just explain that concept, rewild, for me.
Rewilding for me.
Yeah.
Starts every day. Every day I wake up out of bed, the first thing I do is walk for 15 to 45 minutes in any weather. Even if there's this much of my face showing, I've got the pull cords drawn on a raincoat in the winter, and I'm trudging up the lane with my little dog Tilly, who's another massive part of my recovery journey. That's important to me. Get outside, feel that air on your face, get out into that green space, interact with it, hear it, see the birds, feel the wind on your face before you start sticking caffeine and stimulants and everything else into your system. That first 45 minutes of the day is just for you. You don't get to share that part of the day with anyone else. You don't have to, which is quite marvelous. And quite powerful. So the morning daily headspace walk is the start of the rewilding process. And from there, the idea behind the book, rather than have an ego book with a picture of me with, my past life on it or whatever.
Yeah.
I just went for a timeless, nice cover that you can sit on a shelf somewhere, and it shows a person going on a journey there. That's why I picked that.
Yeah.
I live in the Chew Valley, so you've got the lake there, we've got water, mountains, so on and so forth. That whole book, the first 13 pages, is purely to contextualize my journey and for you, the reader, to pick out parts that make sense. Because there's so many, sadly, little chinks of trauma that, you know, everything from loss to injustice to feeling that rejection to all these kind of bits. Everybody's got a version of that they hold 100%. To their own, that they understand. And then the rest of it is a self-help book in the outdoors to living a healthier and happier life. It covers wild swimming, foraging, making a fire, how to use a knife, how to make a spoon, sleeping under the stars, all of it. So you can use that book and then go readily apply that knowledge straight from the off.
It's a strange one because I when I was, I think it was 11, 12, 13, we loved playing in the woods, making bow and arrows and making we worked out getting bamboo from the garden centre with a string.
Strong.
Made the best.
Dens.
Yeah, no, just the bow and arrow.
I mean, right, yeah.
Bamboo and used fishing wire.
Yeah.
They were pretty mad things. Anyway, so I really enjoyed that. And then obviously then you study and and I ended up in an office all the time. And yet I think when we were making a lot of changes as a family, it was almost like subconsciously I made the decision that I want to be back in the countryside. And although I don't make bow and arrows anymore, but now I might try and
go on a bow making course.
Yeah,
I can organise that.
Yeah, but you know, I subconsciously went there because I found peace there. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being out there doing that sort of stuff. And then I made that decision. And we all went out as a family, and we are living like more in the country. But I certainly feel happier as a person than being trapped in the city.
I mean,
with cars and noise and whatever else. Although I love people, and that's really my motive. But I actually prefer being out in the country now. I love it.
I think that reflects, doesn't it? Everything I'm looking at is either forged by an artisan blacksmith or something, or it's been laid by a stonemason using natural stone, probably from this area. Yeah. Or it's a leather sofa, or it's umpteen amounts of house plants at every angle. Yeah. You get that vibe is evident in everything, and just I feel very fortunate to come out here and film with you today. The drive down here has been gleaming. I mean, I'm technically just down the road, an hour down the road there, Bristol, but it's just country, rolling country fields, green hedges, blue skies. Well, today anyway.
but where I'm trying to get to is that subconsciously, you've obviously created that environment for people, but subconsciously I've come to that conclusion that the best place for me as an entrepreneur and being busy, whatever, is to be more out in the wild, and it is to be out in the country and have that fresh air and that walk. Because there are times, you know, it's like, let's just go for a walk. And you just go for a walk.
Isn't the world a better place?
100%.
15 minutes of headspace walk. You could sit there on the toilet and scroll through TikTok, melting your brain into 15-second clips where you can't concentrate on anything more. Because, of course, your brain is neuroplastic, and you're training your brain to be in any given environment that it's in, and therefore your body as a whole, because funnily enough, they go together. Yeah. And so whatever you expose yourself to, you become, or you are, or is your operating system is getting downgraded by just absorbing high amounts of stimulus that your brain hasn't got time. This neocortex is good, but it's not that good. No. It's not as fast as your phone can go, or as the world can operate at. So one thing I will say is you need to take that time, and that's not a smog, should, must, ought to, or got to. It's a strong suggestion. Just to defrag, if you want to put it into computing terms,
100%.
From the million conversations you had that morning and the 20 Instagram, TikTok viral videos that you watched, and all the music that's going around with all the rest of it, just for you to go as a human, because I know we like to think we're this incredibly superior species, but you're no less or more of an animal than the sheep you look out in the field. You know, and we need to make contact with that outside world just to recuperate, recalibrate, re-engage. There's so many different ways of saying it. What have we written in the book there? I'm just trying to rewild ultimately. Yeah.
Yeah. Reset,
recharge, rewild. Yeah. You need that. We all need that.
100%.
I need that.
But that's it. But I don't think people do that enough, and don't know how to.
It almost sounds like
I'm stuck
too easy an answer, doesn't it?
Yeah, just go out for a walk. What do you mean? Just go out for a walk.
Literally go out for a walk.
Yeah.
In any given weather and get used to doing that, because then that accountability, that habit you're creating, that positive habit daily becomes a discipline.
Yeah.
And it starts to override the days where you really don't want to do it, get easier. Doesn't mean they're not easy, but they get easier. And so you
Nick,
create resilience inside of that. So resilience is created outdoors faster than any other environment. And the example I give you is if you're kayaking and you fall out of your kayak, you better do something about that quick, because when you're wet, you're 25 times faster losing heat and more likely to die. So when I go for a walk, if I don't quickly stop and put a coat on or put a tarpaulin up, or there is a call to action in the outdoors that is created that we don't get when we're sat inside the four walls of a air-conditioned, controlled house. And we are now living, because our prerogative for thousands of years has been to choose the path of least resistance or work to create that as humans. Well, we're kind of at a point now where it's dangerous, because it's like, I don't have to leave the house. I can just order all the food to arrive. I can order Amazon to deliver all the things I need.
That's kind of where I was getting to.
Hot water, lighting, everything's instant.
Well, it's almost like
instant gratification.
I'm not there yet, and I can't predict the future. But there is a big part of me that thinks: do we, as a certain westernized civilization, get to a point where we just the big switch off?
Well, we'll just sit there. We'll just be.
Like, I don't want anything electronic. I just go the other way.
Well, that could happen, and I think that at the risk of getting myself cancelled before I've even got started with talking to big tech companies about implementing slight changes. There was an advert a while ago, and it was they got Jason Mansfield, the comedian, in, and they said, don't become an off-grid spoon whittler. And it showed this really like fried, ratty woman with her hair everywhere, dressed in a cave woman's outfit. And she was manically making spoons and throwing them onto a pile of wooden spoons behind her. And then it said, just pick up a mug and sit down and watch your favorite shows on catch up. It was some sort of like but for that advert to take place, there was a meeting behind closed doors, because they're not just going to pay that kind of money for a TV advert. No. So they would have gone, why are people not buying our product? Why are people not sat there watching this box? How do we get people back in the box? Well, we need to ridicule what they're doing. What is it they're doing? Oh, they're all going on bushcraft courses. They're all going into the outdoors and rediscovering the outdoors. How do we get them back? Bombs on seats. Well, we'll get a comedian in to ridicule that, to make spoon whittling look like a pointless cause with a big spoon pile next to her. So I broke that advert down in my head and just went, aha, interesting.
Well, it's interesting, more important, like, I mean, obviously people are going to be watching this podcast and then they know when it was being filmed. If you're a Twitter user, the Twitter yesterday.
Okay.
Elon Musk put limits on Twitter. I think it was Friday or
oh, yes,
Saturday.
It all went a bit wonky. I noticed that.
So basically you could only view 600 tweets. But I recognised that it was my go-to fill a gap scroll.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
And then I couldn't. And then I was like...
So Twitter for me is a game where... So each platform, because I have to run my own social media, and to protect this. Yeah. So I view social media in this kind of way. So I have a handful of trusted friends that we send ridiculous memes and gifts to each other. But they will be a very small circle. Yeah. For the rest of it, I do not allow myself to scroll through this stuff. And most of the time that these memes and gifts are coming in, by the way, I'm being sent them from someone. It's just a constant
my one is
circle.
Because I'm a football fan, I'm checking the football news to find out when our player's been signed.
Ah, right, okay.
And then you're checking it.
Yeah.
Or just seeing the difference with the political situations. Again, I like seeing both sides of the story, and then you can come to your own.
Yeah, again, I don't have to worry about that.
What I'm saying is it's quite a... I'd rather do Twitter than I would read a newspaper, because it's just... You're wider quickly. You can kind of get.
I still listen to the radio in the Landy when I'm driving from place to place. It's the only time I'll get news, because anything else that I need to know, someone's going to tell me. Yeah. Because I live in a small rural community. Yeah. Which is why gossip is a very powerful tool and can be used both sides of the fence. Yeah. So I grew up in a U-shaped high street with 2 pubs, 1 church, 1 shop. If you're not down the pub, they're talking about you down the pub. So when I moved back into the sticks, having finished my rigmarole of living around all the different bases, it was like the devil, So the first thing I did was go down to the parish council and say, hey, my name is, and I want to do this, and I want to bring people from outside the village to spend money in the pubs and the shop. And that's exactly what I've done. I've come good on everything I said I would do. And it's been hard, but I've done it. And so the devil, is quite important, right? And so that gossip thing. But for the same token, bad news goes across the villages on the WhatsApp groups.
Oh, yeah.
Three lads on mopeds caught breaking into so-and-so's shed. And someone will be like, they've just passed my house now. Police now in pursuit. And the locals can talk the police on. I mean, sometimes I can sit there watching the groups just going bzz, 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 cameras. Helicopter just landed in the field behind Farmer John's. Da, da, da. And I'm just sat there watching. I don't need the national news essentially to tell me that a bus full of kids fell off the side of a mountainside in Chile before I've finished having my breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning, because I carry all that fear and all that kind of, if I've got an ounce of empathy, I take that with me. And I see people driving on the road, not letting anyone else out, full of anger, venting,
because
angry at
it's
everything.
That seed being constantly sown, and that's where I'm coming to, is that in order to preserve our sanity, is switching off, is getting out there in the wild, is getting out in the fresh air. Limited,
and I think your approach is key, I would say, rather than being all the way left or all the way right. It's on or off.
Everything's good in moderation, but I think we're very much...
We are heading towards...
Well, as you said, it's like, if I watch a film, invariably that's not the only screen I'm watching whilst the film's on. There's a mobile phone, scrolling, or if I'm watching sport.
That's a sad picture of today's society.
Kind of where you're at, because it's that stimulus constantly. But actually getting outside, where you're walking, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I quite enjoy this. Being like, hang on a minute, everyone be quiet for 2 seconds. And then we listen, there's like nothing.
I love that. I've often said one of the best places to host a conversation, perhaps with a difficult family member. I often say this in group settings or on a stage, I'll say, put your hand up, audience participation. If you've got a difficult family member, everyone should have a hand up. Choose your friends, not your family in this life. So how do you have that all-important conversation with that difficult family member? For me, you invite them around for a barbecue. So you're in the outdoors, so you've got the setting, the environment, and you're cooking. There's two of those big key parts of the old factory settings are being ticked. If somebody wants an out, they can pretend to take a phone call and then walk off. It's less confrontational than sitting in a box, in a room.
One-on-one, face-to-face, on a table.
or invite them to come and help you out doing something in the outdoors, side by side. And again, that's all lessons learned from working in the woods with people. Men in particular, 76% more likely to take their own lives and don't speak up about things. It's incredibly important. That's not to say that women don't suffer too. They absolutely do. But they are far better at the face-to-face.
Communicate.
In the coffee shop, studying every little mannerism of each other's faces. And we see that as confrontational. They're so much better and organised at keeping up with each other and that networking and that side of things. And typically when I find an isolated, disinterested male that's become essentially this kind of lone wolf model we're all sold. Growing up, I was watching all the superstars, one man against them all. The guy who gets beaten, takes a kick in, his whole family killed in front of him, everything goes horribly wrong in the movies. They go away, they do a million push-ups, the montage music starts, they come back, they kick ass, they take over, they win the day, they win against a whole empire, they take everyone on. Sorry, gang, doesn't happen that way. If you look at history, people survived in large organised tribes. And those who tried to go it alone ended up getting poisoned or stabbed in the back. Time and again, it repeats itself.
Well, if you go back far enough, it's covenants.
Totally. Yeah. Agree.
They reckon with Livingstone, the reason why he survived so long is he made so many covenants with all the tribes. And there's a story where he's walking through the forest and he gets held up. And he obviously knows the language and essentially it means put your hands up. So he puts his hands up. And they see all the scars in his hand and they're like, all right, no worries. And then they'll try and cut another covenant with him there because he was so well connected.
Right,
so if you understand the power of covenant, which is what's mine is yours, my enemies are your enemies, I ain't messing with that guy because if I kill him, I've got a whole host
because he's super well connected.
you know, and I think the covenants between tribes is what made them strong. And in the Western culture, we didn't even see marriage as a covenant. We see it as it's a contract. We don't get the concept of covenant making.
Yeah.
Let's say the mafia, they do, because, you know, it's like, we'll do this and there's ceremonials or whatever. But covenant making and being part of a tribe is natural to other civilizations, and that's why they're strong for hundreds and hundreds of years, because they're bound by their word over generations.
Yeah.
Whereas, again, we live in the Western side, so everything's really...
We're very short-sighted, very fickle with everything.
It's just like, whatever, you know, we move on, and it's like, well, hang on a second.
We're not even living for our lifetimes. We're living for our best part of our lifetime, 15 years max.
That's right.
When you're at the top of the tree, you implement change, and you expect to be remembered forever and have... If you think about what makes up identity, you know, that kind of self-worth, which is born of legacy, which is born of having a passion that you do not for money initially, but you will do because you absolutely love it and you're very good at it, and then so the money comes anyway. Yeah. This then starts to build a legacy, which is then remembered as time goes on, and then you get your self-worth from that, and then that's your kind of your purpose, and your identity is all kind of tied in with that. And that's something I'll talk about around a campfire, and then people will then sit there and go, what's my purpose? Do I really believe in what I'm doing? And you've said to me off before we started this a couple of times, people have come on these podcasts and then gone, oh, crikey, what am I doing? And they've quit their jobs and things have happened and they've made movements towards other...
It's a simple thing. I say it's four things. So you, particularly in our lives, we live a life. So the first thing is we launch. So we launch into career, whatever that may be. We launch into it. Then we learn that career. Okay, so we learn, we get good at what we're now in education mode, yeah?
Yeah.
Now we get pretty good at it. Guess what? The reward is leadership.
So when you become the teacher, you cease to be the student. Yeah.
So now you're in the leadership place. Now, this is where most people, whether they are on target or not, is in the leadership place is where they're earning a lot of money, they've got the house, they've got the cars, they've got the this, they've got the whatever. But it's the legacy question, is this what I want to be remembered for? And then you're faced with a choice. You realise that isn't it, so you go somewhere else. Or you stay and just die slowly, whilst alive. Yeah?
Okay.
Or you're brave and you go, you know what, this isn't it, but I'm prepared to go through whatever it is to make sure I get to the legacy point.
Yeah.
And some people, and that's essentially a pattern that people do, but they almost subconsciously do it because that's what they're looking for, because they're looking for that purpose, that sense of meaning, that this is what I'm going to be remembered for. So it's normally at that point of leadership to legacy where a lot of people struggle.
Yeah.
I've got the name, I've got the title, I've got the responsibilities, I've got the debt, I've got all these things on top of me. But this isn't it.
Would you say typically that overlays, just getting to that point, to the same part of a person's life where, and they, who are they anyway? They, them, those people say that it's typically the toughest point of a person's life, the meaty, chewy bit where you are between 30 and 55 or 30 and 60, where we say that typically you are likely to lose a primary caregiver in your life and or another. You're likely to see new life come into this world. So you're going to see life come into this world, life go out of this world. Yeah. You're likely to see marriages, breakups. You're likely to see friendships come, go. Yeah. It's like the all, but whilst going through that really difficult time, which we all think that being a teenager is quite tough, and it is really quite tough, but then it happens again between sort of 35 and the responsibilities that are placed on people are massive by the way we live our lives in society. And so that leadership and that legacy question is all teetering and happening at a point where we couldn't have any more responsibility than we have upon us.
Yeah, I'd say.
Does that play a factor, do you think?
No, I think it does. I think because you're already questioning your own mortality.
Yep.
And I think because you're hitting that big 30.
So that was a benefit for me of going through the trauma at 21, of escaping that ambush in one piece. And literally, I'd realised my mortality rate. At 21, I'd had such a incredible near miss wake up call through surviving that tour, coupled with the backing that meaning up by carrying all those coffins of lads I knew and seeing the parents in the aftermath and the fallout. I was really starting to question everything, and then staying in that game because I had too much pride, too much of an alpha male ego to step away from it, to understand that this was not helping me, and to keep going back time and time again, to keep compressing all of that file to get to where I am now. And that's why I say I feel fortunate. I feel fortunate to have done those yards. And I often say to people that have had difficult starts in life, there's going to come a point where you realize the power of what you've been through, and it won't be that you're the victim. It'll be that you are now empowered as you go on in life, and you see other people starting to have these humongous wobbles, going right into their 50s and 60s. They're having these massive wobbles. Yeah. You've already dealt with that stuff, and you've overcome it, and you've pushed through it. So you are, by the sheer unfortunate fact that you've been through this, empowered, and you have 100% survivability rate.
But the thing is there, you've made that flip, because now with that experience and that stuff you've got legacy in mind. What can I pass on? What baton can I give? What lesson can I hand over?
Exactly it. You've nailed it. So that's what I helped to try and create. I tried to help to repurpose their mindset, because if you can change the meaning, you change the feeling, you change the behaviors.
Which is interesting. So like in that school with the 27 Club, you know the 27 Club?
No, I don't. I feel like I should.
Okay, so the 27 Club is essentially famous people that died at 27.
Oh, yes.
And
no, yes. The frontman for AC/DC, frontman.
Oh, I can't remember.
Scott Bond. They were all 27, weren't they?
27, yeah. So Kurt Cobain was 27. Amy Whitehouse, 27.
Hendrix.
Janis Joplin was 27.
Right.
Don't know about Hendrix. Don't know. But yeah, if you Google 27, but it's interesting. 27 is, it's around that age where you start thinking a little bit more about you and what legacy looks like
bigger
afterwards.
Picture.
You're old enough now that you're not a spring chicken, and you might be losing your hair or whatever it may be. And all of a sudden you go, well, hang on a minute, I'm not going to be like this forever.
No.
And either they check out, or they try and escape and check out, or they do something about it. And I think for me, that's kind of where I see purpose. If I can help people go, you're going to be at that point at some point. It might be 27, it might be 37, it might be 57.
Understand the realism.
But if I can help you now go into that next peak, as you said, then I'm doing my job to do something more meaningful and more worthwhile.
Good on you, mate. That's important.
Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
How will people get hold of you?
Well, there's a number of ways of getting hold of me. You can
message in a bottle through a river.
It's pigeons, mainly pigeons and smoke signals. Smoke signals. So if you'd like to book me for a speaking gig, or you'd like me to come and speak to your workforce or your team, then that's going to probably be along the lines of sending an email to tracy@nickgoldsmith.co.uk.
Yeah,
I think that's right. You can go and have a look at the Hidden Valley Bushcraft website. Yeah. I'll apologise now. It's about to get updated.
Right, okay.
The Woodland Warrior program website is being revamped as we speak. And so at the moment, it's fine, but it's going to get really good when we hit the live button on that in the next couple of weeks. Yeah. There has been a huge movement in what I've been doing in the last year. And again, I've got to thank some of that, Tracy Duke, for some of that, for the executive coaching. Okay. I decided I'd got so far in my journey. And with all these things, there's only so much deep thinking you can do around a campfire and reflecting and talking, and until you realise at some point, maybe you haven't got the tools to the toolbox to do the thing. If someone gives me the tools, I can then go do the thing, right? So that's the kind of how I always saw my journey with mental health with the psychiatrists and psychologists. So EMDR, NLP, CBT, whatever they were throwing at me that week. Meanwhile, they were the other side of things were doing acupuncture, hydrotherapy pool, they were yoga. They were throwing everything at me to peel me off the ceiling initially. Well, look, in the same way, we're never the finished product. We can always be a better version. So I took some money out of the business the latter part of last year. I'd learned some really hard lessons, business, mainly business, not so much on a personal business stuff. And then lo and behold, it turned out that I still had some yards to do on myself. So I got asked some poignant questions, and I did the executive coaching for 6 months, and it has been a game changer. So now I'm like, right. So I just needed to make some tweaks to the way I approach the world of business and some bits and pieces. Because of course, not trained classically to be a professional business person. I'm very much a self-taught, unorthodox entrepreneur who thinks outside the box and sees opportunities and isn't afraid to ask a question or say, hey, can we work together or whatever. And I'd been stung a few times and I'd learnt some hard lessons there. And I call it treading on the rake of kindness, where you're too kind, you're too nice, you're too giving, and then whoosh, out of nowhere the rake hits you. But it happened more than once. So I was like, right, got to make a change.
So you got the people around you to spot the signs.
I've got that nipped in the bud now. So everything goes through Tracy when it comes to speaking gigs and stuff like that, because then that stops me saying yes to everything.
Cool.
I just want to help people.
Well, thank you so much.
Hard.
This book, I'll just put it available everywhere.
Available everywhere from Waterstones, Amazon. It's in America, it's in Australia, it's in Dubai. It's kind of going all over.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you for your time. It's very kind of
it's
you.
been absolutely brilliant. I'm gonna read this, obviously, and you might see me out in the wild, but I'm sure we're gonna stay in contact as well.
I'm certain of it. Yeah.
But really enjoyed our time together. You now break the record for the longest podcast. So well done.
Dear God, sorry about that.
No, good. It's all good. Thank you.